What's up guys, welcome back to the YouTube channel. Today is something awesome. We're gonna install a fully Brembo setup on my R1. Let's go. So, what are we gonna install? Well, let's start on the top. We will add a Brembo clutch lever just to match up the rest of the stuff. So this is pretty sick. Original Brembo clutch lever. Really nice. Then, a Brembo RCS 19 Corsa Corta front brake pump. In the past I had a normal RCS 19. I really liked that one, but I wanted to step up the game with the brake pump. So I chose to buy the Corsa Corta. And what this has is it has loads of adjustments. So what you can adjust on this brake pump is the brake lever ratio. 18 is to create a more softer brake pump feel. This is good for softer riding or rain riding. And then you got the 20mm. This is for aggressive brake reaction and basically for track use. And it provides a really good bite when you have it on 20. Then you got this adjustment button. The N is for a normal engagement when the brake engaged. Then you got sport. This is basically your engagement of the brake is a little bit earlier. And after that you also got race, and this has really less play in the brake pump, and this is the really aggressive engagement on the brakes. And then at last you can adjust the angle of the brake lever, just like that. And then on the back we got the necessary brake light sensor because we're using a road bike. Then I almost forgot, but we need this brake line adapter because the Brembo brake has a horizontal mounting position and the OEM front brake pump has a vertical mounting position. And this will basically recreate how this brake line is going, because we're mounting this like this, and then we will attach the brake line on this side. Then we can still use the OEM brake lines. Then we got, the rear brake caliper. And normally it's mounted like this, just like OEM. But what makes this so special, this brake caliper is a underslung. This is basically goes on like this. And what makes this so unique and useful, normally when you put in the tire, you always have to wiggle around to get the brake disc between the caliper, and it's just really annoying. And with this setup you can basically just hang it inside the caliper, leave it there, then get the axle and slide the axle in. So this is so much easier for changing wheels and tires. And yeah, it just looks really sick, especially with the front calipers. Then we also got a custom-made brake line. This is for the rear brake, and the manufacturer of this brake line is Hell. This is a custom-made one, so I spec'd it out myself. So I wanted this block on this side, and I want a horizontal linkage on this side, so I can still use my ABS. Next up on the list we got these bad boys, Brembo GP4 RX brake calipers. And I already upgraded these ones with titanium brake pistons. Normally they have aluminum brake pistons, and I chose for titanium brake pistons. So let me explain. Why did I choose to upgrade my brake calipers? Well, Yamaha is known by that it has horrible brakes as stock on a bike. And I had a track day a couple days ago with the OEM brakes, and they were basically shit because they cannot resist a lot of heat. When you are a faster rider, then you will create more braking power, so more heat, and what that does is it fades your brake. So what I did about 3 laps with hard braking, and then in the 4th lap I just didn't had any brake power anymore. So that's also really dangerous, and I want good performance for my bike, so I choose to step up the game and buy the GP4 RXs. So why did I choose titanium brake pistons? So when I drove with these calipers, with the OEM brake pistons, after a session I felt that the wheel was not spinning as easy as it is now. So this is how a wheel needs to spin, and what it does when I came out of the session was it spins like this. And that was because I had OEM brake pistons. The OEM brake pistons are from aluminum. The aluminum piston does is it expands and it doesn't cool off as fast as the calipers do. So what it does, if a material gets hot, it expands. And if it expands too much and doesn't retract when it gets colder, it will get stuck inside the caliper. And when it's stuck in the caliper, your brake pads will wear against the brake disc, and that will cause a not turning good wheel. So you always have to clean your brake calipers. These have to be as clean as possible to get the best free spinning wheel. So these brake calipers are really clean, and as you can see, it's spinning quite good. Not as good as I want it to be, but we will try that with these calipers. So I chose for titanium because titanium has a different expanding factor than the aluminum pistons. These titanium pistons will retract way faster than the aluminum ones, so they will cool off way faster than the normal ones. So they don't get stuck inside the caliper, so they will keep moving very good at high temperatures too. They also got these points on the edge. This is also to make as less contact with the brake pads to prevent any heat travel from the brake pads to the pistons. So with that in combination, you got a massively good brake caliper. Also, I switched the normal bleeding valve to a style boost bleeding valve. What makes this so special is when you remove the rubber nut, you attach the bleeding line on this nipple and then you turn it so it opens. But normally it can go inside and outside with the oil. What this does, this has a ball with a spring in it, and when you open it, the spring will keep the opening shut. And then when you pump the brake, the spring goes in and it opens up this piece when you pump. So when you are solo and you want to bleed your brakes, just buy these, then just open it and just pump it like this, and it will automatically bleed itself, and you don't have to close it every time. So pumping, close, open, so on, so on. But I will explain that later on in the video when we are gonna bleed the brake calipers. Then I'm using the SBS Dual Sinter 2 brake pads. These are very good for track and also for road use. In the past I used carbon brake pads. These are really good on track, but you need to have a lot of heat in them to get really good brake power. And when you're using them on the road, you don't get a lot of heat in the calipers and they will mess up your brake disc. That is why I'm already using the Brembo T-Dive floating discs, because these were my stock brake discs, and as you can see, they are full of grooves. And the carbon brake pads did this because they don't get heat in the brake pads, and on the road the carbon eats itself into the brake discs because it doesn't get any heat. so it will just mess up the brake discs. And then again, that's why the T-Drive Brembo floating discs are already on the bike. But I just wanted to explain this. So if you're riding with carbon brake pads, it's okay, but don't use it on the road. Switch to normal brake pads or sinter brake pads. So then a quick explanation about the fully floating discs. As you can see, the disc can move on its own. Fully floating means that the brake disc is basically just floating around the midsection of the brake disc. And when a material gets hot, it expands. And when it expands, it needs to go somewhere. On a OEM brake disc, it cannot move like this. It's just solid. It cannot really expand. Yeah, it can expand in these little slots, but it's not fully moving. These have a lot of play to move. So because the disc can move like this, it can expand really easy. And it can also center itself in the caliper. So yeah, that's why I'm choosing to use the fully floating T-Drive rotors to my bike setup. Then we got the Brembo HTC 64T brake fluid, and this brake fluid is basically the best that you can get. This brake fluid has the smallest compression ratio than all the brake fluids that are out there. This brake fluid has so little compression space that it will keep your brake as hard as possible. Other brake fluid manufacturers have also very good oils, but some of them you still have a lot of squeeze in the brake, and sometimes that has to do with the brake fluid that you're using. But if you take this one, the Brembo HTC 64T, that's basically the best you can get. There is basically nothing better than this fluid. So with that being said, I'm hoping that you now fully understand my decisions and why I choose to upgrade all my brakes and all the parts that belong to it. With that being said, let's start disassembling and we'll get back to work. Let's go. So we're gonna start with removing the first caliper. I will speed up this process every time, so you don't have to wait till I get them off. So, see you in a bit. So the first brake caliper is off. Now I'm just letting this drip out. So a lot of the oil is already gone, because at the end we're also going to change the oil. So what I'm doing now is I want to open up the oil reservoir. What this will do is it will get rid of the vacuum that's inside the brake lines. And as you can see now, it's dripping. And when I remove this, it will start flowing faster. So to prevent that we will make a big mess out of this, I'm first gonna mount the first Brembo caliper and then remove the other side. Then this will stop dripping. So then I can use this little container to catch the oil on the other side. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. So this is the first caliper that's going onto the bike. But first we need to install the brake pads. And the first thing you're gonna place, or the first thing you want to mount, is this piece. This is the spring to keep the brake pads inside the caliper. And on this tiny spring you see, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a small arrow on it that's pointing at the rotation of the wheel. So the wheel rotates like this, and the arrow points up. So you know that this plate has to go in from the top, just like that. So now we can turn it over and put in the brake pads. So this is the first one, second one. Make sure you got an even gap so you can fold it around the brake disc. So this one is ready. Now we only just need the spacers and the longer bolts, because these are basically universal brake calipers, but this is a Japanese bike, and then on Japanese bike this distance is 108 millimeter, and on other bikes like BMW this is 100 millimeter. So fun fact to know. And because these are not stock brake calipers and these are universal, we need spacers for here and longer bolts. So we'll put this on with the brake line first. To get the best fitment, this linkage has to turn 90 degrees, but unfortunately we don't have that, so we have to force it like this. It's not really a big problem. I've driven with this way longer, so this is not a problem. But yeah, that's why I'm putting on the brake line first, so we can easily twist the brake line. So putting it on, taking the spacers, the second one. First brake calipers on, we will torque them down later. So first one done, let's switch the bike around and then we do the other side. Let's go. So both calipers are done, so now we can torque them down. Let's do that real quick and I'll get back to you. So the brake caliper bolts need to go on 35 and the banjo bolt needs to go on 25. So first we're gonna do 35. That's one. Let's do the other side. Okay, so now let's do 25. Done. And the other one. Done. So brakes are fully mounted. Let's go. So now we can move on to loosen up the master cylinder. So first thing I'm going to do is loosen the banjo bolt. And then these two small bolts. Just putting a rag under it for all the oil that's going to drip out. Don't think it's going to be much because the container is already empty. So now we can loosen these connectors on the bottom for the brake light sensor. Just like that. The only thing now we have to do is loosen up this clamp and remove the brake line. So loosening up this clamp. Oh, by the way, I'm using the OEM brake reservoir because it works great with the Brembo master cylinder and it also looks very good. If you use the Brembo brake reservoir, it just looks really ugly because you have to mount it on one of these bolts and you got a really big arm where the reservoir is mounted on. So yeah, I'm just using the OEM brake line and the brake reservoir because I like to have a clean look on my bike and not a weird one. So yeah, I'm removing this one and then we'll move on. Master cylinder is off. So now it's time for this beauty. Just look at it. So nice. Alright, the master cylinder is mounted, so now we'll move on to mount the brake line and the brake line or the brake reservoir hose. So now it's time to install the brake line adapter. Therefore we need some new copper seal rings. So we take a banjo bolt, a ring. So now we're gonna try and fit it. Just like that. And as you can see, we now can, I don't know if you can see it, but we can now mount the OEM brake line straight to the Corsa Corta brake pump because of this adapter. So we will take another banjo bolt, some seals. I'm gonna put it like this. Let's feel how it is sitting. Alright, the brakes are on. The only thing we have to do now is get some new connectors and put these on the cable so that we can put them in these connectors. But I'll do that in another time. So now we can start the bleeding process. We're gonna do that with the vacuum because the lines are fully drained out with oil, so they're basically almost empty. And with this vacuum it will make the job a lot easier. So first we're gonna loosen up this nut. This nut has the spring in it with the ball. So if you open it a little bit, it will still be closed and the vacuum will not work. So we have to rotate it a couple of times so it's fully open. Then we can suck out all the oil from the top. So I'm filling up the top and then we'll start sucking out all the oil. Let's go. So I filled up the reservoir with oil. So now we can start the vacuum process. So I have sucked out all of the air on this caliper. Now we'll repeat the process on the other caliper and then we'll go on and clear up the air on top. So I mounted the rubber hose on this nipple and we're gonna bleed that by getting the right amount of pressure. So now we'll pump till we got pressure and we already got pressure. So now just hold the lever, then slightly open it. And as you can see, there was a little bit of air and now there's only coming oil. So we'll still hold it, then close it back down and relieve the brake lever. And now we will repeat this process till there is no air coming out of this nipple. And after that we will go back down and do the same thing on the calipers. But that's something different. Let's go. So I attached the rubber hose on the first caliper and this is where these Stahlbus bleeding valves are so useful, because normally the way to do this is by how I did it with the brake lever, but this is the way you have to do it with the style bus bleeding valve. So you just open it, no pushing on the brake, just open it a little bit, and as you can see there's nothing coming. And now I just gonna pump and look at the hose. Up, there's the oil. But now I'm gonna let go of the lever and watch the oil. It stays there. This nipple closes itself when I relieve the brake lever. So you don't have to open and close and repeat the process again and again, just like the master cylinder. This is just so much faster, especially when you're on your own. So now we're gonna just pump till there's no air coming out. Repeat the process on the other caliper too, and then we're basically good to go. So the level to seal this off, the maximum, what I always do is just a little bit under the upper level. This is, for me, this is perfect, because you still want to have a little bit of air on top so the oil can wiggle around. But now this is where the small tips and tricks can do the magic. To put this in, you want to put this in without getting pressure into this container. So you want to put this in, but leave a gap just like this, so you don't create pressure by putting in the rubber sealing. Just like this. Putting it in with room on the outside, and then when it's fully in, just plop it to the side and it's good. If you put it in without leaving a gap on the side, you will put this rubber in with a little bit of pressure, and that may cause a little bit of pressure into the system, and that will cause that your brake calipers might be slipping a little bit, so your wheel will not spin as free as normal. I don't know if that is a good explanation, but I hope you understand. So put this rubber in with a small gap on the side when putting it in. And at last, putting in the plastic cap and screwing it in on top, and then you're good to go. So the final step for perfectly bleeded brakes, I like to do to get a zip tie. Just put it a little bit on pressure, not too much, but a little bit, then put a zip tie around it and leave it overnight. And then the next morning you bleed all the valves again and it should be perfect. So it's the next morning and I left the brake under a little bit of pressure with this zip tie. And now we're gonna check if we're gonna see any leaks on this banjo bolt. No leaks. This banjo bolt, no leaks. Then on this one, also no leaks. And the other side looks also clean. So the brakes are fully under pressure right now. So now we will loosen up this zip tie, just like that. And we're gonna feel how it is. Yeah, this is perfect. This looks amazing. Yes, works great. The brake pads still need to wear in on this disc, so that will take 1 or 2 rides, and then it's perfectly done. But in the next episode we will finish up the back, then we'll do the rear underslung mount with the Brembo caliper, and we will mount the Brembo clutch lever. So I hope you enjoyed this build, and I'll catch you in the next one. See you soon.